that for all the good it can do us, it might as well be in the remotest star. If we can find the key to the lock, then instead of pampering the appetite of our engine with delicacies like coal and oil, we shall induce it to work on a plain diet of subatomic energy. If that day ever arrives, a year's supply of fuel will be carried in a teacup.
These prophetic words were said in 1930 by British astronomer Arthur Eddington. "38 years later, in 1968, the world's first atomic-powered merchant ship put into port to refuel. The travels of the nuclear ship Savannah had been unique. In 5 years, she had sailed more than 330,000 miles, had touched 77 ports in 26 countries across the globe, and only now, for the first time, would she refuel. A conventional merchant ship on an identical voyage would have burned more than 21 million gallons of oil, with frequent refueling. But the Savannah sailed its 5-year journey on only 122 pounds of nuclear fuel. For all practical purposes, not much more than Dr. Eddington's supply in a teacup. In the last quarter century, the atom has added more to man's knowledge of matter than all the thought and science written down since time began. And yet, the atomic age has only just begun. Each year opens new doors to progress, and 1968 was one such year, a year of new frontiers in nuclear science. For research, for those who study and use the atom, 1968 was a year of purpose. Throughout its 22 years, the United States Atomic Energy Commission has devoted itself to basic science, technology, and the application of nuclear knowledge to the benefit of mankind. It looks to man's problems and the needs of people everywhere. Its hundreds of research projects probe the hidden mysteries of matter, and much has been learned in just a few years. We know now that nuclear energy can help us explore the depths of the sea, the substance of Earth, and the dark of outer space. We know that from now until the end of this century, we will need several times the electrical energy consumed in all the years before. In the United States today, in 1968, more than 50 nuclear power plants are in operation or being built. Almost 50 more are in the planning stage. And when these plants have been built, U.S. utilities will then use nuclear energy to generate a total of 73 million kilowatts of electrical power, enough to meet the needs of almost 40 million people. A reactor burns no coal or oil. It does not pollute the air. It is fueled with uranium-235. For the near-term future, there are enough low-cost natural uranium reserves to meet our needs. But we can foresee a time when these reserves will dwindle. To meet that problem, we are designing nuclear power reactors that will use fuel resources more efficiently, that will operate economically at high power levels. 1968 was a year of significant progress. Experimental Breeder Reactor No. 2 in Idaho, a working laboratory for studies of fuel performance in fast breeders. An advanced concept, the fast breeder reactor shows great promise. It uses fuel with high efficiency. As it generates electricity, it will actually produce or breed more nuclear fuel than it consumes. A new fuel, plutonium. By the 1980s, breeder reactors should be producing electricity and at the same time adding to our stockpile of plutonium. This prospect has led, in turn, to increased research on very large breeder reactors fueled with plutonium. The zero-power plutonium reactor, completed in 1968, was designed specifically to permit the mock-up of plutonium cores for very large fast breeder reactors. Purpose? To determine design features for central station power breeder reactors that can produce up to 1 million kilowatts of electricity. Still further in our future, another avenue of breeder research has led to the molten salt reactor experiment. Its potential: lower fuel inventory, high fuel breeding ratio, reduced operating costs. These are challenging research objectives. Uranium-233 is a man-made isotope of uranium co-discovered by Nobel Prize winner Dr. Glenn T. Seaborg. Uranium-233 is fissionable and can be used as nuclear fuel. In October of 1968, the molten salt reactor experiment was fueled with uranium-233. AEC Chairman Seaborg presided. This was the first time any nuclear reactor has been fueled with uranium-233. A molten salt breeder reactor will transmute thorium, a non-fissionable, abundant natural element, into uranium-233 for use as fuel in other reactors. Thorium is found in sand and granite in vast quantities throughout the world, a resource of fertile nuclear material for centuries to come. Limitless energy, economically accessible in nature. Plentiful energy, cheap electricity may well solve some of the world's pressing problems. One-third of the world's land is dry and desolate. Some of these arid, unproductive regions may be reclaimed by large-scale, low-cost nuclear energy. 1968. This was the year that produced a blueprint for huge nuclear energy centers. Agro-industrial complexes to make the coastal deserts bloom, to turn them into self-sustaining agricultural and industrial centers. On a sun-baked desert, a nuclear power reactor, to pump millions of gallons of water from the sea nearby, provide the heat to desalt it, and at the same time, produce electricity to run machines that extract the ocean's wealth of minerals and process aluminum and other products from nearby deposits of raw materials. Hydrogen from the water will be combined with nitrogen from the air to make fertilizers. Fertilizers and fresh desalted water for irrigation will enrich the land where no crops have grown for centuries. Man-made plutonium and uranium-233 will be our fuels of the future. But until they are, uranium-235 will remain the most useful nuclear fuel we have. And the Earth must be combed to find new deposits of natural uranium ore. Private industry reports plans for nearly 100 million feet of exploratory drilling in the United States during the 4-year period beginning in 1968. An increase of 5 times the previous 4-year effort. The cost? $135 million. This program will help ensure that the expanding needs for uranium to fuel nuclear power plants will be met. As uranium comes from the mill, the concentration of the fissionable isotope uranium-235 is very low. To use it as a fuel in a nuclear power reactor, the concentration of fissionable uranium must be increased. This uranium enrichment is a costly and complex process. Up until January 1, 1969, enriched uranium used for fuel in nuclear power plants was leased or purchased by industry from the Atomic Energy Commission. Under new toll enrichment contracts, industry may ship its own uranium to one of the AEC's 3 gaseous diffusion plants for enrichment. For this enrichment service, the AEC levies a toll or charge. The first domestic toll enrichment contract was signed in the summer of 1968. It marked the beginning of private industry's more effective control of fuel costs, a major step toward the growth of economic nuclear power. But the atomic energy program is much more than this. The AEC, with the support of the Joint Congressional Committee on Atomic Energy, oversees a vast, nationwide, industrial, scientific, and educational complex whose purpose is betterment of the quality of life for people everywhere.